Victims will be put front and centre of the justice system, according to the Justice Secretary David Lammy, as he prepares to announce government plans to tackle the mounting backlog of court cases, what he's calling a courts emergency.
Lawyers, though, have expressed concerns that plans to scrap jury trials could undermine public trust. The Justice Secretary
David Lammy has been accused of making a massive mistake by Labour MPs and peers after announcing radical plans to cut thousands of jury trials across England and Wales. Defendants will no longer have the option to choose to have their cases heard before a jury, the Justice Secretary told the Commons. Magistrates' powers will be extended from dealing with maximum sentences of 1 year to at least 18 months, he said, and a new judge-led court will be established. The Deputy Prime Minister has backed down on plans to remove jury trials for all cases involving a maximum jail term of 5 years after an outcry from MPs, lawyers and campaigners. The proposals are closely aligned with the sentencing review by the retired judge, Sir Brian Levison, who had suggested diverting more offences to magistrates' courts or to a new intermediate court called the Crown Court Bench Division. The government has said, jury trials will be reserved for cases in indictable-only offences such as murder and rape and either-way offences with a likely sentence of more than 3 years in prison. Defendants in either-way offences with likely sentences of 3 years or less will no longer be able to choose a jury trial. Magistrates' court sentencing powers will be increased from 1 year to 18 months. The powers could also be extended to 24 months if necessary. A new tier of judge-only swift courts will be created to hear cases without a jury. There were about 15,000 cases dealt with by jury trial in the year to June, according to criminal court statistics. Under the new proposals, civil servants estimate that 2,500 of those would have been heard in the new Crown Court Bench Division and 5,000 by magistrates. The remainder would have been heard by juries. The move means defendants accused of burglary, theft, fraud, sexual assault, stalking, sharing indecent images, drug dealing and criminal damage up to £10,000 could be denied the right to put their case to a jury. Lammy told MPs, as Sir Brian has made clear, investment is not enough. The caseload is projected to reach 100,000 by 2028 and without fundamental change, could keep rising, meaning justice will be denied to more victims, and trust in the system will collapse. Mr. Speaker, to avoid that disaster, I will follow Sir Brian's bold blueprint for change. Labour MPs said the changes would make it harder for defendants and may not reduce the backlog. Stella Creasy, the MP for Walthamstow, said jury trials only accounted for 3% of cases, asking how much difference curbing them would make. It's hard to see how this measure will address that backlog, she said. Clive Efford, the MP for Eltham and Chislehurst and a leading member of the Tribune Group, said it could penalise working-class defendants and could lead to an us and them in the criminal justice system. Richard Bergen, the left-leaning MP for Leeds East, said the policy sent a chill through my heart, and compared it to policies enacted by the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. Doesn't the Justice Secretary want to think again? He said. Writing on X, Carl Turner, the Labour MP for Kingston upon Hull East, said the proposals were a massive mistake and would never get through Parliament. The entire House is concerned about victims, including attacks on women and girls. But the entire House is also concerned about the many women who will undoubtedly suffer miscarriages of justice if the right to trial by jury is curtailed, Abbott said. Helena Kennedy, the Labour peer and human rights barrister, said Lammy's claim that rape victims were missing out on justice because of delays fueled by jury trials was shameful. She told Times Radio that those calling for curbs on jury trials usually had a snooty view of the general public's ability to try a case. I think that we should recognise that this would be the end of jury trial, she said. A memo leaked last week had suggested Lammy was looking at going further, making jury trials applicable only for public interest offences with possible prison sentences of more than 5 years, removing the ancient right of thousands of defendants to be heard before a jury. The Justice Secretary suggested on Sky News that discussions in Cabinet had led to the current proposals, raising the prospect there had been a backlash to such radical reforms. Lammy will face opposition from human rights organisations, barristers and some race campaigners who believe there should be no erosion of the right to a jury trial. Riel Carmer-Jones KC, the chair of the Criminal Bar Association, said the proposals bring a wrecking ball to a system that has been in place for generations. Juries work, They do their job superbly and without bias. Juries have not caused the backlog, she said. A review conducted by Lammy in 2017 concluded that juries remained fit for purpose and act as a filter for prejudice. Speaking in the Commons, the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, said, his past is catching up with him, because the best opponent of the Justice Secretary's plans to curb jury trials is the Justice Secretary himself. In 2020 he said, criminal trials without juries are a bad idea. You do not fix the backlog with trials that are widely perceived as unfair. In 2017, in his report into prejudice in the criminal justice system, he found juries, and I quote, act as a filter for prejudice, but now he's become Justice Secretary, he's scrapping the very institution he once lauded. Which is it? Will the real David Lammy please stand up? Jenrick also brought up previous comments made by Keir Starmer, saying, and what about this? There should be a right to trial by jury in all criminal cases. Any ideas, Mr. Speaker? Who else but the Prime Minister this time? Does this government have no shame? Show more. David Lammy's jury trial bombshell. Labour turns on its own Justice Secretary. Right, let's not waste any time. David Lammy has just detonated what might be the most politically toxic proposal of this government's tenure, and his own party is ready to string him up for it. The Justice Secretary has announced plans to strip thousands of defendants of their right to jury trials, and the backlash isn't coming from the usual suspects, it's coming from within Labour's own ranks. And before we go any further, if you're invested in British politics and want to stay ahead of the chaos unfolding at Westminster, hit that subscribe button for Current UK. We're bringing you the analysis that matters, without the fluff. Here's what Lammy has proposed. Defendants will no longer have the option to choose jury trials for a vast swathe of offences. Magistrates' powers will expand from handling maximum sentences of 1 year to at least 18 months, possibly even 24. A new judge-led court, no jury, just a judge, will be established to speed things along. The government insists this is about tackling the Crown Court backlog, which is projected to hit a staggering 100,000 cases by 2028. But this isn't just tinkering at the edges. This is dismantling a cornerstone of British justice that stood for centuries, and the political explosion has been immediate and brutal. The proposals follow recommendations from retired Judge Sir Brian Levison, who suggested diverting more cases to magistrates' courts or creating an intermediate tier. Under Lammy's blueprint, jury trials will be reserved for the most serious indictable-only offences like murder and rape, and either way offences likely to result in sentences exceeding 3 years. Everything else? You're getting a magistrate or a judge sitting alone. No 12 ordinary citizens weighing the evidence. No ancient safeguard against state overreach. Just a swift, efficient processing system that has civil servants estimating 2,500 cases would go to the new Crown Court Bench Division and 5,000 to magistrates, leaving only the remainder for juries. Out of roughly 15,000 jury trials in the year to June, that's a dramatic reduction. Think about what this means in practice. Burglary, theft, fraud, sexual assault, stalking, sharing indecent images, drug dealing, criminal damage up to £10,000, all could be heard without a jury. Lammy argues this is necessary to prevent the justice system from collapsing under its own weight, telling the Commons that without fundamental change, justice will be denied to more victims and trust in the system will evaporate. But his own MPs aren't buying it, and their dissent has been withering. Stella Creasy, MP for Walthamstow, pointed out that jury trials account for only 3% of cases. How much difference, she asked pointedly, would curbing them actually make? It's a question that cuts to the heart of Lammy's logic. If jury trials are such a tiny fraction of the workload, why are they being scapegoated for a backlog driven by years of funding cuts, court closures, and chronic underinvestment? Clive Efford from Eltham and Chislehurst warned this could penalise working-class defendants and create a two-tier criminal justice system, one standard for those who can afford clever legal manoeuvring, another for everyone else. That's not justice. That's a postcode lottery with prison sentences. And if you're enjoying this breakdown of Westminster's latest drama, give this video a like and share it with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening in British politics right now. Let's keep going, because it gets worse for Lammy. Richard Bergen, the left-leaning MP for Leeds East, said the policy sent a chill through his heart and, in a comparison that will make Tory attack ads for years, likened it to measures enacted by Vladimir Putin. Yes, Putin. That's the company Lammy's proposals are keeping in the minds of his critics. Bergen asked directly, doesn't the Justice Secretary want to think again? Meanwhile, Carl Turner, Labour MP for Kingston upon Hull East, took to social media to brand the proposals a massive mistake and predicted they'd never pass through Parliament. When your own side is publicly declaring your flagship policy dead on arrival, you know you've miscalculated spectacularly. Then came Diane Abbott, the veteran MP and former Shadow Home Secretary, who noted that while the entire House is concerned about victims, including attacks on women and girls, the entire House should also be concerned about the many women who will undoubtedly suffer miscarriages of justice if the right to trial by jury is curtailed. It's a devastating point delivered with the kind of moral clarity that cuts through political spin. Abbott understands what Lammy seems to have forgotten: the right to be judged by your peers isn't some administrative inconvenience. It's a fundamental protection against arbitrary power. Helena Kennedy, the Labour peer and distinguished human rights barrister, went even further. She called Lammy's claim that rape victims are missing out on justice because of delays caused by jury trials shameful. Speaking to Times Radio, Kennedy said those calling for restrictions on jury trials usually harbour a snooty view of the general public's ability to try a case. She warned bluntly, this would be the end of jury trial. When a legal heavyweight of Kennedy's stature describes your policy as shameful and predicts the death of an institution older than Parliament itself, you should be listening. Instead, Lammy appears to be ploughing ahead, albeit with modifications. Because here's the delicious irony: Lammy has already backed down once. A leaked memo last week suggested he was considering going even further, making jury trials applicable only for public interest offences with possible prison sentences exceeding 5 years. That would have been an even more radical dismantling of the system. The outcry from MPs, lawyers, and campaigners forced a retreat to the current proposals, which Lammy himself hinted were shaped by cabinet discussions. Translation: his colleagues told him he was political dynamite and forced him to dial it back. But even the watered-down version is proving toxic. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Current UK is your destination for fearless political analysis. Hit that button. The backlash extends well beyond Westminster. Riel Carmer-Jones KC, chair of the Criminal Bar Association, said the proposals bring a wrecking ball to a system that's been in place for generations. She defended juries with passion. They work, they do their job superbly, and without bias. Juries have not caused the backlog. It's a simple truth that exposes the dishonesty at the heart of this debate. The backlog exists because of systemic underfunding, staff shortages, crumbling court infrastructure, and a decade of austerity that hollowed out the justice system. Blaming juries is like blaming the passengers when your train service collapses because you've closed half the stations and sacked the drivers. And this is where it gets properly awkward for Lammy. Back in 2017, when he conducted a review into prejudice in the criminal justice system, he concluded that juries remained fit for purpose and acted as a filter for prejudice. In 2020, he said criminal trials without juries were a bad idea, warning that you don't fix the backlog with trials widely perceived as unfair. His own words. His own conclusions. And now his Justice Secretary is scrapping the very institution he once lauded. The Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, had an absolute field day with this in the Commons, asking sarcastically, which is it? Will the real David Lammy please stand up? Jenrick also quoted Keir Starmer from years past: there should be a right to trial by jury in all criminal cases. Does this government have no shame? Jenrick thundered. It's political gold for the opposition and a nightmare for Labour. You cannot spend years defending an institution, building your reputation as a thoughtful voice on criminal justice reform, and then turn around and dismantle it the moment you're handed power. Well, you can, but don't be surprised when everyone calls you a hypocrite and your own MPs revolt. This isn't just a policy disagreement. It's a credibility crisis for Lammy personally and a trust problem for a government that promised integrity and competence. Human rights organizations, barristers, and race campaigners, groups that would typically align with Labour, are lining up against this. They recognize what Lammy seems desperate to ignore: there should be no erosion of the right to a jury trial, full stop. Juries represent the participation of ordinary people in the administration of justice. They bring community standards, common sense, and a crucial check on prosecutorial and judicial power into the courtroom. They are messy, occasionally slow, and wonderfully, essentially democratic. Replacing them with streamlined judge-only courts might deliver efficiency, but it sacrifices legitimacy. The government's own figures suggest this would redirect thousands of cases, but the impact on the backlog remains questionable at best. If jury trials are only 3% of cases, as Stella Creasy noted, then this reform is surgery with a sledgehammer, maximum disruption for minimal gain. The real solutions lie elsewhere: more judges, more courtrooms, better funding for legal aid, investment in court technology, and reversing the damage done by years of cuts. But those solutions require money and political will. Lammy's proposals require neither, which makes them attractive to a treasury always looking to do justice on the cheap. Except this isn't justice. It's processing. And let's talk about who gets hurt by this. Defendants facing burglary, theft, fraud, sexual assault, stalking, these aren't minor charges. These are serious accusations that can destroy lives, careers, and reputations. The right to have 12 impartial citizens assess the evidence and decide your fate is one of the most important protections you have. Strip that away, and you're left hoping that an overworked magistrate or a single judge has the time, energy, and lack of bias to give your case the attention it deserves. Clive Efford's warning about a two-tier system isn't hyperbole. It's prophecy. Those with resources will find ways to navigate the system. Those without will be steamrolled. There's also a deeply uncomfortable racial dimension that Lammy, of all people, should recognize. His own 2017 review acknowledged that prejudice exists in the criminal justice system and that juries can act as a check on it. Now he's proposing to remove that check. Black and minority ethnic defendants, who already face disproportionate charging and sentencing, will be more vulnerable in a system where a single decision-maker holds all the power. Juries deliberate collectively, challenging each other's assumptions and biases. A lone judge or magistrate has no such mechanism. This isn't progress. It's regression disguised as efficiency. So where does this leave Lammy and the government? Politically isolated, legally challenged, and morally compromised. The Justice Secretary has managed to unite his own backbenchers, the opposition, the legal profession, and civil liberties campaigners against him. That takes a special kind of incompetence. The proposals may yet be watered down further, amended into irrelevance, or quietly shelved after the inevitable consultation process reveals universal opposition. But the damage is done. Lammy's reputation as a thoughtful reformer is shattered. Labour's claim to be the party of justice and fairness looks hollow. And trust in the government's competence takes another hit. This isn't just bad policy. It's bad politics wrapped in bad judgment. The irony is that Lammy probably believes he's being bold and decisive, grasping the nettle that others feared to touch. But boldness without wisdom is recklessness, and decisiveness without consultation is arrogance. He's learned that the hard way. The backlog in Crown courts is a genuine crisis that demands urgent action, but dismantling jury trials is the wrong solution to the right problem. It's a betrayal of principle for the sake of expediency, and it's being called out as exactly that. Make sure you're subscribed to Current UK because this story is far from over. The parliamentary battles, the legal challenges, the internal Labour warfare, will be covering every twist. And if you found this analysis valuable, smash that like button and share it. The more people understand what's really happening, the harder it becomes for politicians to get away with this kind of nonsense. We're living through a moment where fundamental rights are being casually traded for administrative convenience, and we all need to pay attention. Stay informed, stay critical, and we'll see you in the next video.